Because of the way the universe is created, we each of us live in two worlds at the same time. We have to live in the outer life of our own bodies and the inner life of our own souls.
Hello and welcome to Living the Inner Life. I'm your host, Chris Sheridan, and I want you to join with me on a journey into our inner lives, our thoughts, feelings, emotions, everything that we have that helps shape the way we respond to and interact with the outside world. And if we can utilize the tools of consciousness, we can live a better life, inner, outer, and in our total experience. Well, the great Greek philosopher Heraclitus once said, "You can't step into the same river twice." Obviously, the river water has been flowing, and even a few minutes later, the water's going to be different water. But more importantly, you're a different you. Whether it was 5 minutes or 5 years ago that you stepped into that river, it's not the same you. And this brings up a good point, and that's what I want to talk about now, and that's living in the past, or more precisely, living from the past. You can't do it, okay? You can only live in the present. You can't live in the future either. But if you approach your life from the exact same way in every way that you did several years ago, maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, it's not going to be likely the best plan, the best way of approaching the way your life is now. Your life has changed, your circumstances are different, or at least some of them are, and you are different. You have had more life experiences, things that have worked, failures, successes, things that help shape the way you interact with the events and circumstances around you. Okay, so I want to explore that a little bit further, and I want to first of all say, in some ways, we have to live from past experience. If we don't take a lesson from history, particularly our own history, then we're doomed to repeat the same mistakes. So we have to build and base who we are now from the things that we've gone through, the things that we've experienced, the things we learn. In fact, that's how we learn. You can't go on to multiplication and division if somehow you forgot how to add and subtract, if you're learning math in school. So you need to remember. So you're building from the past, just like a building is built from the ground up, or actually the underground, usually some foundation, up. And you don't do away with the lower floors. You need them. That's the whole basis of what comes next. But you don't stay stuck on the first floor. Okay? You want to build, you want to go up. But this is a way, not only do we learn, but it's how we memorize things. Okay? If you memorize a speech, if you're a musician and you memorize a song, or just remembering math tables, you have to keep that locked in. Okay? So in cases like that, you are living from the past. If you are driving and you've driven this route several times before, you don't need the map or the GPS or to stop and ask for directions. At some point, you remember. Your mind remembers. Your hands remember, this muscle memory that we have that really works well for musicians. And it helps inform you, and we don't have to relearn the same thing every single day. We don't wake up with total amnesia. Okay, so it is really important to remember things from the past, to build from past experience, to learn and grow from this foundation. But what happens sometimes is we end up approaching a current situation from a mindset that worked maybe a long time ago and may or may not be the best policy now. But like memorizing, or this muscle memory, or remembering the route home that you've driven several times, if you've approached similar situations in the same manner for many, many years, over and over again, it's going to be a habit. It may be your go-to response. It may be the only thing that you think about. And you may not even think about it. You could be on autopilot. So If a situation comes up and you respond to it a certain way in the past, and here it is years later, and it's another situation similar, we're going to pull from that and respond in a similar way. But we have to stop and say, is this the best way? And you might notice this. First of all, you have to become aware of it, that maybe you're living from instructions or playing old tapes from the past to approach a current thing in the present. It would be like using an old password from the past. You're not going to get into your account. Okay? So some of these old things just don't work anymore. Things have changed. You have changed. So one way that you can recognize that maybe you're working from an old paradigm or playing these old tapes is if it's not working. Okay? If it is working, then maybe you remembered something valuable and it applies to this current situation. I'm not saying at all that everything you learned in the past will not be helpful for you now. But where it gets troublesome is when it's a habitual autopilot and sometimes emotionally triggered response, or really a reaction. Because a response, you spend a little more time thinking about something and being aware of how you're responding. But a reaction is like a knee-jerk. It's a reflex. You don't really do much thinking. It's just what comes up. Okay? So if you're in a situation and you use what you've used before in the past and it's not really working, and if you could recognize that, maybe it's because you're approaching it in the wrong way. There's an old saying that all dogs are like the dog that bit you. Okay? Now, early on, if you get bitten by a dog, you might have a fear of dogs. That could be healthy or unhealthy, but you should probably have some awareness of any kind of animal and how you treat them and how maybe they sense fear or react to you. But to look at all dogs the same way, you're going to prejudge how this dog is and how you're going to react. And you may even come up with a self-fulfilling prophecy that you're going to, oh no, that dog's going to bite me. And then you're going to be projecting fear and you might do the wrong thing. And it could happen again. More likely, though, you're just going to not have favorable, or you'll eliminate the chance, the opportunity to have a new experience. Okay? Because if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. All right? There's also another quote that says, this has to do with the definition of insanity, and that's trying the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Okay? And that's kind of at the core of what I'm talking about now, is using an approach to a current situation that may have worked in the past, may have been the only tool that you had in the past to help yourself get through this type of a situation. And it worked the first time, maybe it worked the first 10 times, but if you double down and keep trying again and it's not working and it's not working, it's just going to lead to frustration, or you're going to blame this failure, so to speak, on the situation or the other person, if that's part of the condition that you're working through right now. And you're going to deny yourself, really, the opportunity to have a new experience with it. Okay? We can get stuck in our ways. We can get in this very emotionally tied state where it's not so much logically what comes up right now that you stop and go, well, how should I approach this? I know that. Again, it comes up very quickly. And what it does is it actually takes you back to that time that you got bit by the dog, or whenever it was that you responded to a situation or reacted, I guess, in a certain way. And not only are you using the same tape again, the same passcode or the same approach to this, you're actually, in addition, bringing in the same emotional state that you were in then. And if it's in the case of a dog bite, that would be a fearful, perhaps frightening, or even traumatic experience. And not only do we remember the response, our body, some part of us remembers the emotional state. So if something else comes up, and say it's not actually a dog that's barking or snarling or potentially may have this biting function coming at you, it could be the boss yelling at you, or the fear of the boss yelling at you. Anything that's kind of like that. It doesn't have to be on the nose exactly a dog. It could be anything else that puts you in that perhaps powerless situation, or somebody who's unpredictable, or again, somebody who maybe is angry and snarling at you. It could be anybody. It could be a spouse. Like I said, it could be a boss. It could even be a child, somebody who obviously isn't going to harm you. And sometimes little kids do bite you, but that's another story. But you're not in this powerless situation. You're actually in the power situation if you're a parent and your child is, whining or complaining or throwing a tantrum or something like that. But you forget that because you're emotionally connected with what happened before. And if this current situation matches in some way the emotional state that you're in when this completely different thing happened back then, you're going to respond somewhat in the same way. Okay? And it's not the best way now, or it may not be the best way. And it's always good to check in. Okay? And if your response, which may be in the form of a reaction, very quick reaction to a situation now, is not working, stop, pause, and ask, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing unconsciously that maybe I need to spread a little consciousness on? I may need to open this up. Okay, I may need to set aside the way I felt about this, maybe the way I felt about this kind of thing for a long time, so that I may have a new experience with it. Or you're just going to be stuck in this causality loop where you're experiencing the same thing in the same way over and over again, and it usually doesn't get better. It can get worse over time. It can become more habitual, and it may even spread out to more situations, even completely unrelated ones, that creep in this emotional experience that you had before, and it's going to send you off to this old tape. It's going to play an old way of reacting, responding, and handling a situation. Okay? So, again, if it doesn't seem to be working, pause and say, am I doing this? Is there another way I can do this? Is there something else I can say in this situation? Is there a different way I can say something or whatever I have to say? Emotionally, these are just the outward things, maybe what you say or do. I want to say something new. I want to maybe do something new or in a different way. But also how you think and how you feel, more importantly. How can I, inside, in my inner life, have a new experience with this situation? Okay? And even if it's worked 1,000 times before, it doesn't mean it's going to work this time. Usually it's, the ratio is much more skewed than that. Maybe it only worked once, but since it worked that once, and maybe you were younger then, and maybe you didn't have as many tools because you didn't have the experience. Maybe you were younger and in a powerless or less powerful situation. Other people had the power, or this dog, whatever it is. And you can be sent back into this feeling of powerlessness. And when an animal is cornered, and people too, with fear and with feeling that you don't have power, you can react in a lot of very negative ways, either to exert power or to run away. You can yell and scream or start crying, whatever you want to do or whatever you're kind of programmed to do. This is about reprogramming, okay? You're not going to run the same script for a new situation. And to do that, you have to go back and in the present moment, go back in your mind and say, why am I reacting this way? Am I in control of my thoughts, speech, and action? Or am I just reacting habitually a way I've done 100, 1,000 times before? Can I have a new experience? What was it back then? Okay, and how am I different? Like Heraclitus was talking about this river. Okay, the situation is different. The conditions surrounding the situation are different. And the you that has experienced this is different, or I hope so, because if this is something that was years ago established and years later, you're still responding, still reacting in the same way without any form of self-reflection, you may not be doing yourself the best service by reacting that way, okay? And it's not such a logical, rational part to it that you really want to focus on. It's the emotional reaction, okay? The gut feeling. Your heart might sink, or you shiver in the light of this person who's angry, and you're going to shut down, or you're going to run away, or you're going to yell back, or throw a tantrum, whatever it is you're going to do. It may be coming from an earlier emotional state. Okay, and if you were younger, you only really had so many tools to deal with. And a lot of times in a traumatic situation, sometimes kids will act out and throw a tantrum, or they may do the opposite. They might close up and clam up. Okay, if you're not being heard, or if you try to speak up and you're shut down or disregarded in some way, you might feel like your opinion or your voice doesn't matter. And maybe that actually worked for you. It stopped the pain, okay? Better not to speak up than get shut down. That might be a thought process or kind of an unconscious thought process that goes on. And if that's the case, and in that moment, way back when, it worked, you might tell yourself silently, geez, well, okay, that worked. The next time it comes up, you shut down, don't speak your mind, don't raise any kind of voice, keep yourself censored and squashed and small. But if that keeps you safe, keeps your feelings from getting hurt, then that may set in motion this habit pattern. And again, when you're young, it worked. That's all you had to work with. But say you're older now, and you're at work, you're in the boardroom, there's a meeting, and you want to speak up, and this somehow reminds you unconsciously of this older situation, you're going to react the same way, most likely, unless you're doing this kind of a work and you're learning and growing and reconfiguring the way you structure your response. Okay, so that may not be the best policy then, but it kind of looks and feels like it, or part of you feels that, and it can take you unawares and send you back. And without even knowing, you're doing the same thing over and over again. So stop, ask yourself, is this the best way? Is there a better way? Can I put aside what's the way I've always done things? Okay, is it working? Can you set that aside for a moment and say, can I have a new experience with this? Seems like here we go again. I'm in this new situation. It's the 39th time I've been in this situation or something like it. What can I do? How can I get to where it's favorable now? What response? What new response? And you have to kind of let your ego go a little bit too. Because if you hold on too tightly to what you think the best way is to manage a situation like this, you get too embedded, too married to this idea because it's been repeated. It's become a habit. Then you're not going to have room to allow a new one to arise. Okay? So ask yourself, what was it in the past that got me in this situation? Say, well, just keep that theme going with playing small. Okay? If you play small when you're younger, it keeps you from getting hurt. That worked for many years. Now you're an adult, you're in a relationship, and you don't speak up for yourself. And you're just subservient and, okay, go along with everything. Don't want to make waves, don't want to rock the boat, okay? Because then that'll be like, you don't actually think that, but part of your memory, part of your muscle memory or your emotional memory does have that. And you go back to that. And again, like I'm saying at work or anything like that, or when you're in the power position and your children are being unruly, and it's like, oh, I don't want to make waves. Oh, I don't want, hurt anyone's feelings. I don't want to be the bad guy. It's like, no, that's your job as a parent. Okay. Unfortunately, you want to be a parent, you want to be a mentor, you want to be a friend, a buddy to your children, because it's so much fun to do some things with them, but you also have to be the grown-up, okay? And you have to say the thing that's going to, oh, Dad, are you kidding me? Mom, eat your vegetables. No, you can't have that cereal, you got to take a bath, whatever it is that they may not like. Well, too darn bad, you're teaching them how to live their life. And hopefully that's from experience and you're congruent, you're moving with integrity, you're telling them to do the things that you are also doing in your life. Okay? It doesn't make you the bad guy, but you do need to speak up because then not only you're not helping yourself, you're not really helping your children. So being shut down from an older sibling or a parent or a neighbor or other relative when you're a child, and playing small and clamming up and just keeping to yourself worked then, doesn't work now. Find a new way. Ask, is there a better way? Is there another way? Is there a new way I can look at this? I can approach this and see if that can produce better results. Because you can't step into the same river twice. The river has changed. You have changed. And with this change, with this growth that you've built upon from the past, you can approach life and the conditions, situations, more importantly, relationships in all different manners in your life. If you can have a new experience and not play the old tapes and bring in a new set of values, see yourself as being this different person, get yourself out of that wounded child. Maybe you can even help heal that past situation by saying, hey, things are different now. Okay, I know you want to run and hide. I know you want to close your mouth. I know you want me to shut down. And that worked for us back then. It really did. Thank you. That rocked. But now, this is okay. Okay, we're not this scared child. We're a grown-up now. We have more power. We have a lot of experience, we have abilities and ways of dealing with things that we didn't have then. We can do this now. Let's try a new way. It sounds a little weird, you're talking to your inner child or something like that, but it is a relationship and you're not trying to sever the connection, you're trying to mature it. You're saying, hey, that worked then. Great, thank you. We made it, we survived. Okay, but now we're in a different situation now. We can look at things differently. We can approach this situation and any other one that may need a new way of looking at it, a new way of responding, and a new way of living your life. And since that all takes place in consciousness, it is about living the inner life And I want to thank you for listening. I've been doing this for a while, all this 2023 so far. It's mid-September, and I think I'm at episode 65. I seem to be getting more views, more response on YouTube, and that's fine too, although I still feel that this is very much an audio podcast. The videos get some response. And one of the great things about YouTube is you can interact with other people, and I want to take a moment now to pause and give a very special hello and shout out to my friend Anne from Living Theosophy. I think that's going to be rebranded pretty soon as Academy Sophia. And she's wonderful. She has a theosophical kind of viewpoint, but really any kind of ancient wisdom, perennial philosophy. I'll put a link up to her channel. Great stuff. And I want to hear more about what you're doing. And leave a comment, rate and subscribe, and do all those things if you so feel like doing it. And we'll see you next time here on Living the Inner Life.